May I have a motion to open the meeting, please? Heather, second. Bill, all in favor? And now I need a motion to go into executive for the purpose of personnel and legal negotiations. Okay. Lisa, second. Heather, all in favor? Thank you. Oh. Hello. Hi. Okay. Hi. The board has returned from executive session. No actions were taken. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'd just like to take a motion to return to public session. May I have a first? Lisa? May I have a second? Bill? All in favor? Thank you. Okay, so we are now going to have the budget presentation for adoption.
Welcome, everybody. April 22nd, this is our budget adoption for the 25-26 fiscal school year. Just a little update on the New York State budget, because state aid is a component of our budget. The state still has not passed a budget. It was due on April 1st, and they're still negotiating that budget. Again, all indicators are that state school aid is not one of the items that they are in controversy over. Therefore, we don't expect a significant change in state aid when they finally adopt the budget. So at our last meeting on April 8th, we began with where we stood on March 11th, where our budget was. This is just a summary of what happened at April 8th, some of our discussions. So we discussed that the budget increase was $1,619,000. And we then went forward with, these were the items that the board wanted to discuss at that meeting on April 8th. These were the expenditure and program adjustments, either that were organically through the budget process and additional ones that the board asked us to look at. And this was really where we started our April 8th meeting. But another important component, we're going to come back to this slide also, but another important component of that meeting was the board deciding where they wanted to land with a tax levy, because it addressed how we were going to work on the expenditure items in the budget. So a discussion ensued at the last meeting between the board as to option 1 and option 2. And what that means is option 1 was the board inclined, they kind of you landed in conversation at a desired 1.75% tax levy. But then to achieve that, the board considered either designating an additional fund balance, which would have brought that to $1,925,000. You see that off on the left. And then the board discussed the merits of that, what that would mean long term, and they went through those discussions. That was option 1. Option 2 was, instead of appropriating or designating additional fund balance, would they address the expenditures that were in the budget and bring the expenditures down? So those were the two options, or a combination thereof. And that's where we spent most of the time. It was a long and very productive meeting. So we're going to go back to the prior slide. And as a result of that meeting, I crossed this out because the board in discussions was comfortable with reducing expenditures and having those conversations, given some of the unknowns in the future that may be happening to public school finance, and as they were discussing those, and you guys discussed those at the table. So then we went back to all of the considerations that were in the budget that night. And we literally talked about them one at a time. And I'll just go over them, globally.
When we went over the possible changes, we didn't go over the budget. You said all the pieces of the budget. This budget is assuming that the 79 million that we never really looked at closely is being spent properly. And that, I need you to attest to all of us and all the people in this town that there's no waste in that 79 million, because we never looked at it, and we're looking at a small little piece of expenditures and debating whether we want a math coach or not. But how do we know there's not waste in the 79 million that we didn't even debate or discuss? That's so let's not say we're looking at the entire budget.
Well, Mark, I just want to say that can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of questions about the budget after that meeting.
Good.
And I did talk to Joe because I had a question about like $132,000 that is spent on travel, conferences. I had a question about contractual expenses, which added up to be almost 300,000, things like that. And Joe went through the codes with me, and it does seem like, obviously we didn't go through every penny.
No,
and
$79 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's my
So,
question every year
yeah.
is why are we, how do we always have $4 million left over at the end of the year too, and then we're saying we don't have money to pay for field trips? I don't know, it blows my mind. I don't remember, maybe I was on the phone with one of you after the last board meeting. I wasn't here for the last board meeting. I don't understand how we get to this point where we're still nickel and diming. We're raising taxes. We're nickel and diming the community still. And then we're going to have overages. I just don't get it.
Well, the cushion's
And
one
the
component.
fencing, I
Good.
know that's
We'll
this
get
year's
to that.
budget, but
when did we decide on that?
we didn't decide on it.
Good, because I'm not
I
sure.
I watched
yeah.
the meeting. We didn't decide on it.
No, I said when do
Oh,
we
yeah.
decide on that? When is that supposed
We
to?
can
We
decide
didn't
on it.
decide on that.
Well,
we didn't
didn't
vote.
decide
We'll
on that yet.
direct
Okay.
that. Don't
Okay.
worry. Okay.
Okay, so I mean, that was my question too after the last meeting, is why are we just looking at what we're gonna give or take off of the current list and not what we already have every year?
Well, yeah, there's the
That we
cushion.
could cut,
We've
that we don't
asked for-
use.
but we keep asking for where the cushion.
Well, that's the one
lives.
component, but the other component is the existing expenditures,
Yeah.
which we're just saying,
Right.
yes,
I agree.
they're all
The
good.
$79 million. Yeah.
And we're not even
Yeah.
broaching that. I don't know. I just found out we pay consultants 6 figures. How many of those do we have? One?
I
Or
only
more?
know of one consultant that's here.
That's it? Okay. So we have one consultant earning.
That's all you know, though. Maybe there's more that we're not, that we don't know.
I don't know how I'm supposed to do my fiduciary responsibility to spend the taxpayers' money when I don't even know. We spent hours and hours debating $1.7 million. And we didn't even broach 79 million. So I honestly, again, I call on my business experience and whatnot. No one does that. It's like you look at the entire set of expenditures and you go down and you say, do we need this? Do we need that?
Right.
Not do we need an CSE chair? Maybe we do, but under this under just looking at here and then we're doing a tax levy, it's very troubling to me. But if this is how it's done, because it's my first year, then it's how it's done. But I got to tell you, I don't think this is the right way to do it.
Well,
It's not.
I'm gonna add a little bit of I'm just going to backtrack a little bit, although I can't see this very well. When you started in, I just want to see which one it is that I go there. I think, Joe, does this say February 11th, right?
Yeah, that does.
This one?
Oh, down, one down.
This one?
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go.
When we started the process, does this say present right here?
Yes.
Give it a second, it's probably loading. just gonna go fast. Not that fast, it's loading. Okay, when we started in February, we talked about how we would see each of the details of all of the $70 million in the budget and all the presentations that all of the buildings and departments did. Unfortunately, in February, we ended that meeting without the 4 buildings and athletics doing their presentations. So we started there, and then we went into March, and we finished the balance of those 6 presentations for buildings and grounds, admin, and all the other groups. And those presentations, Mark, to answer your question, had all of the details of all of the $70 million that you're speaking to. So this just laid out how you're going to see the $70 million and the details of what's built into each of those items. And then we had the individual presentations here for each of those. I don't even know which one this is, but I'm just clicking one because I'm sure that's somebody's. This was the technology one. And so when technology's presentation was completed, and I think Rihanna was here to answer, those questions, this was her budget, and each of those buildings or departments had in it their details of every one of their line items. Hang on, just trying to get there because it's loading. Every one of their line items and what they bought out of that money on the right-hand side. So,
Okay.
And but Christine, I see your point. Thank you. And we had that snowstorm, and
Yes,
we
we
didn't
had
do
the
it. And
snow.
we
That
said,
was-
let's all read them, and we get a big binder
Mhm.
with every single. But to Mark's point,
Mhm.
the question is, in our binder, as you go through, like Kate had to call Joe and say, what is this $130,000 for travel? What does that mean? Like, we have no time where we actually can sit and do that. So I think for the future, we should talk about, how do we pull that apart? Do we need a separate board committee? Do we need something where we're looking at all of these items prior to the meeting in February, where people are saying, here's what I want to spend next year too, what I want to add, and here's where my budget will change, just to see, do we think that this is a reasonable place to be putting so much money, right? And to have a plan for what it looks like with ICT too. ICT came about because this board wanted it, right? And if there's a plan that's presented to us over 4 years, 5 years, what that looks like and what the growth is, then that helps us to make other decisions too. Can we afford to cover the Washington, D.C.? Where I think Mark's point is that we don't have enough information on all of the other pieces, long range, short range. And we do spend, it's a good point, we do spend a lot of time talking about this much of the budget, which is how it always has been. And it's just looking at things from a new perspective now. It's not someone's fault that that's how it's been in the past, but how can we do it better? That's our responsibility, right?
So I had put in Friday notes the way we had done it maybe
Yeah.
5 years ago. I forget when things changed. Maybe it probably started around COVID. We would hold 2, it could have been 3 budget work sessions starting at 6 o'clock, and each building would present. And you would get what we called the budget book. It was actually every item. It may not have said pencils, pens, may have been general supplies,
Right.
$1,000. It maybe wasn't in that exact detail. But it really was fairly detailed of the information that was on there. And each principal would go, I'll just say it started, Goose Hill was the first person. They would be sitting there. You had their budget book with all the information in it. You ask whatever questions you had, they could answer because they're the best person knowing what they're purchasing, what they're using it for. They're done, they go home. Next would be Lloyd Harbor and West Side. They would go. And you had all that information, exactly what you're asking for, the exact detail of where the money is being spent, and you asked the person who made that budget, and that's the person
Right.
exactly.
And we
has that
talked about it
information.
doing sort of flipped, where you would read it at home then, so they didn't have to just read slides, because that takes a long time.
Right, there were no slides.
Okay, right.
There
Oh,
were
you're
no
just looking at the book.
Right, they were
That-
booking it
okay.
you would hope you look at it before, come with questions
Yeah.
before, and that person would be able to answer, here's exactly what we're looking to purchase
Yeah.
and why.
So
But I guess and to Christine, like, what would your recommendation be then moving forward for us? to better understand the other portion of the budget, because you're the expert who knows what this budget looks like, right?
No, I
Inside
would-
and out.
I would definitely recommend that each of the budget builders, the principals, the directors, that you hear directly from them how they build their budgets, what's important to them, what they're continuing to support, what changes they have. And it actually does provide an organic picture of what's happening in the district, money equaling student programs. I was saying, like, you really want the money conversation to equal the
Yeah.
student program opportunities. And really hearing it that way is really a very comprehensive way to look at the budget, understand the budget, and also be comfortable in what it's supporting.
So I went through the budget book because when I found out we pay a consultant 6 figures, I went through the book to see if we have the detail where I could find that. And could you show me, because I never found it?
So
It's in
I
there?
was saying, so Joe, you were saying that you would, years ago, you would give it out ahead of time because, like, I think, Mark, that's supposed to be in curriculum instruction, and we don't have anything in there.
Yeah, we used to get
Oh.
Yeah.
like an inserts for them. My first year, we'd bring our binder. You'd bring your binder with you to the meeting. And now this is, I mean, I'm the person, and I think Bill too, who's like, stop giving us paper. Can we all put it all online? But if there was some way to have it, whether it was like in a password protected portal for us, or if it's all public, if it could be public, whatever it is, so that it could be read thoroughly in advance, because we are, I think, missing sections.
Yeah, because you made this statement that it's all in there if we do, and then okay, but
not.
it's not though, and that's the problem is we're spending money. It's not, I mean, it's one thing if it's in a book and I'm like, I'm not reading it, then that's on me, but it's not even in the book. And then some of the things in the book, we just don't have no way of knowing. So is it the building's head or the building head, they go in and they decide what they want, and then they build that budget and send it to you? So they are re-upping things they want again, or they're making changes. They have full autonomy to change their budget. You give them a dollar amount and then they make those changes, or they just write whatever they want and send it in to you? How does that work?
They build their budgets, they get the, I'll call it the templates on the way we want to see the budgets built, and then they come in and they meet with central office on their budgets, what their reasoning is for what their additions, deletions, whatever their reasonings are for their budget requests, and that makes its way through the budget process into their line items in their budget.
How do they know how much to spend?
They ask for what their needs are first, and then we go from there.
we
So if
review
their
it.
needs are something new, let's say there's a new program we're rolling out, they build it in, and then we discuss from really a little higher level perspective, how much of those needs,
So you're cutting things before we even see them?
not really at Cold Spring Harbor, we align them to our goals and make sure that our goals are happening.
You understand, they have no budget, you're saying, so then, but they
Any
seem
new
to come in
initiative,
close? I don't know how they do.
they're continuing the initiatives that they have, because
Yeah.
that's what we're supporting, and any new items they have are things that we would bring forward to the board and say, we're looking to expand the ICT program, we're looking to, so that even though they might build it in, we then parse that out to be something to discuss with the board.
Okay.
In the past, we have seen, different buildings put together like wish list items, and we were able to go through, and kind of pick and choose what we wanted, what we thought was important. I feel like we didn't really get that this year. None of the, I remember Mark asking, Ms. Cosme, if she could have anything, what would she want? Or if Mr. Dan Buskey could have anything, what could he want? I just think it's important that stuff should be in there moving forward.
So they're due this Friday from, again, this is going forward, it wouldn't have been for this budget.
Right.
And some of it, we talk like next year, a 3-year, a 5-year.
Hello, hi, okay, hi. The board has returned from executive session. No actions were taken. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'd just like to take a motion to return to public session. May I have a first? Lisa? May I have a second? Bill? All in favor? Thank you. Okay, so we are now going to have the budget presentation for adoption.
All right, welcome everybody. April 22nd, this is our budget adoption for the 25-26 fiscal school year. Just a little just update on the New York State budget, because state aid is a component of our budget. The state still has not passed a budget. It was due on April 1st, and they're still negotiating that budget. Again, all indicators are that state school aid is not one of the items that they are in controversy over. Therefore, we don't expect a significant change in state aid when they finally adopt the budget. So at our last meeting on April 8th, we began with where we stood on March 11th, where our budget was. This is just a summary of what happened at April 8th, some of our discussions. So we discussed that the budget increase was $1,619,000, and we then went forward with, these were the items that the board wanted to discuss at that meeting on April 8th. These were the expenditure and program adjustments, either that were organically through the budget process and additional ones that the board asked us to look at. And and this was really where we started our April 8th meeting. But another important component, we're going to come back to this slide also, but another important component of that meeting was the board deciding where they wanted to land with a tax levy, because it addressed how we were going to work on the expenditure items in the budget. So a discussion ensued at the last meeting between the board as to option 1 and option 2. And what that means is option 1 was, was the board inclined, they kind of you landed in conversation at a desired 1.75% tax levy. But then to achieve that, the board considered either designating an additional fund balance, which would have brought that to $1,925,000. You see that off on the left. And then the board discussed the merits of that, what that would mean long term, and they went through those discussions. That was option 1. Option 2 was, instead of appropriating or designating additional fund balance, would they address the expenditures that were in the budget and bring the expenditures down? So those were the two options, or a combination thereof. And that's where we spent most of the time. It was a long and very productive meeting. So we're going to go back to the prior slide. And as a result of that meeting, I crossed this out because the board in discussions was comfortable with reducing expenditures and having those conversations, given some of the unknowns in the future that may be happening to public school finance, and as they were discussing those, and you guys discussed those at the table. So then we went back to all of the considerations that were in the budget that night. And we literally talked about them one at a time. And I'll just go over them, overall, globally.
When we went over the possible changes, we didn't go over the budget. You said all the pieces of the budget. This budget is assuming that the 79 million that we never really looked at closely is being spent properly. And that, I need you to attest to all of us and all the people in this town that there's no, because it's already contracted, but how much of that budget can actually be negotiated or eliminated? You're saying 85% cannot be eliminated, right?
Well, that's what the assumption, most staff is collectively bargained, not all,
Right.
but most are collectively bargained. So once we reach agreement with those units, we have set agreements there.
I'm going to ask a question, which is going to be annoying because we're talking about $80 million. I'm going to ask you about this $382,000 that in the last meeting was decided to not use. Is that right? This green part here, the trips, the storage unit, is that
So
comes out
behind-
to $382,000?
So behind you, yes, are the decisions,
Yeah,
the
yes,
approved-
okay, so can
Yep.
I ask about, and this is
Sure.
why I'm asking about the fencing. And I know that's this year's money, and I know we're talking about next year's.
Sure.
But if we as a board are approving or not approving some of that fencing, is there money left over from this year that gets rolled into next year at all to do some of these things? I just hate to bring up people's taxes and then say we weren't able to do these small items when we're talking about millions of dollars here.
The money at the end of the year, it doesn't roll into for the next operational budget. It has to be placed
Right,
in
so-
one of its
Yes, but so
designated
can we
places.
place it somewhere so that we can use it to cover some of these costs? If, for example, this board isn't behind spending whatever that was,
226 on
over $200,000 on fencing. I mean, that's
You couldn't use this year's money for next year's items. You'd have to amend the final budget. You'd have to amend right here. You'd have to amend this budget to include those items in the proper line items, and then you would be adopting a budget here that has a different total expenditure line, and then we would have to have a different total revenue line. So
Right.
we would have to amend
Yes,
next
you'd
year's
have to make
budget.
amendments, obviously, yes.
Mhm.
But my question is there still wiggle room here on April 22nd at 8:15 PM to have that conversation? And should we be talking then about, when we're talking about big picture, should we be finishing our conversations about what we're spending this year before we plan on what we're spending next year if we think we're going to have money left over?
That
Well-
piece I'm not understanding, Alex.
So
Say that
if
one more
we
time.
think after we decide on the budget for next year, we're going to
Mhm.
go back and say, well, now we've got all this money left over. What should we do with it? Should we spend it on fencing? Where should we put it? Are we doing it backwards? Should we be talking about whether or not we're using that money at all? And if not, should we be talking about amending this before we move forward tonight?
That is a decision that you would have to, but the money for this year, the revenues from this year and the expenditures from this year match this year's operational costs. We
Right.
really wouldn't be able to just use this year's money in next year without just making changes to the final budget. Yeah,
Amending.
Changing the budget.
Could we do amendments? Could we just talk about our current year's money now and see if we have anything left in the cookie jar and then make amendments and
To
fix
amend-
some of our
To amend next year's,
future issues?
to amend next year's budget, there are two options. You can either do transfers amongst the codes that exist for items that come up, like so you transfer money
Yeah.
amongst the codes that are there. The only other option is to amend the budget for an ordinary contingent expense that the board deems a contingent expense.
Okay, so, but my question is, should we be talking about, does other people follow what I'm saying?
What I
here?
think you're asking is, every year we have reserves. You said every year we
Yeah.
have reserves.
Sure.
The reserves then get applied.
Mhm.
You know, but she's asking, how much do we have in reserve right now?
I think
Before
I-
you apply that.
I think with
Right, and then we're going to talk about whether or not to spend some of it
Right,
after
she said
this.
maybe
So
we'll
why
just-
don't we should talk about that first?
Yeah.
And then know if we have money that we could amend the budget with to cover some of these things that we're saying we don't have money for, when later in the night we may find the money after we've adopted this. It just seems backwards to
So
me.
the-
The only thing I want to point out, because we spent a lot of time on this last meeting, whatever's left this year, I fully agree we could pay for something for this year that maybe we don't have in the budget, like a field trip, right? But I think one of the pitfalls is that 1.2 million designated fund balance, which is plugging the budget for
Right.
next year, that comes from this year. But you're not guaranteed to have that much money.
No,
in
I know
each.
that,
So
so if we have this money left over right now, the $230,000 left over for fencing this year, chances are it's probably somewhere in next year's budget too, is my guess.
I thought that was all from this year.
That is
No.
all from this year.
Yes, it's this year's
And
money,
it's
but I'm saying
non-repeatable. No, it's non-repeatable.
it's non-repeatable. Are we sure? Where did that money?
I'm asking, I'll let
Well,
Christine answered.
we are identified that we believe we'll have a surplus this year, and we're talking about what next year's surplus would be. We're predicting it now,
Yeah.
and we're saying, will it be approximately what it is this year?
Same conversation every
What's
year.
the
Yeah.
surplus? What's the surplus?
As
this
we
year?
discussed in February, we estimate the surplus at $3.5 million.
Right.
Just
$3.5
next
million
year's
dollars.
reserves.
So $3.5 million is our surplus this
Right.
year. So she's asking,
Including or not including the fencing money?
Well, once we do some of these purchases, that's going to change, the
Well,
$3.5
does
million.
that include the $3.5 million that you're
It-
saying now? Does that include the $230,000 for fencing, yes or no?
It was done before the fencing.
Okay, so it's it's 307 million?
3 point.
Yeah, we said we're going to be
Three-
between
3.7
$2.5 and
million,
$4 million
yeah.
is our range. We estimate, that's where we're going to be, and that will change it.
In the
Okay.
reserves.
No,
And
no,
now
it's-
we're up to,
I'm sorry, it's going the opposite way. It's going down. The 3.5 million is without fencing
Right.
and other things. If you want to put fencing in this year,
You're spending.
your excess will be
So
3.2.
it does include the fencing, then the 3.5,
That estimate was done before the fencing conversation
so the fencing
occurred.
would come out of that?
Correct.
Okay, the opposite direction, God, thank you.
And the 1.2 million comes out of that as well, that we're plugging for next year.
Right.
The 1.2 million replicates itself, as we spoke about, from year to year, so that 1.2 million is a constant right now, and.
But where does it come from?
It comes from
Excess from
Either-
this year?
Yeah.
operations that end with a net zero or surplus operations. Either of those two
So if we're
it comes
talking
from.
about the 3.5 million, just to simplify things, and you're taking fencing out, so now you're down to 3.25 million. And then Bill's saying if you're taking out the 1.2, now are you down to 2 million?
The 1.2 million does not come off of that bill. It's a constant from year to year. So you see this slide right here, when the board was discussing option one and option
It
two?
seems like a different
No,
answer than what
no.
you.
I agree.
Yeah.
That money has to come from somewhere. It's not from taxes, it's not from state
Right.
aid. It's coming from this year's excess that we're spending next year
Christine
to
makes,
not increase
Ye-
taxes.
Yes, but if we didn't have any
but it's
excess,
budgeted in
Yeah.
addition to the 3.5 million, is that correct?
if you didn't have any excess this year, let's say we ended exactly at zero,
That's right.
Yeah.
okay? You still have all the fund balance and reserves that we have on our books and records, okay? With none of them depleting. When we start to get to an operational deficit, you're either declining your reserve balances or declining your fund balance, which is designated or undesignated. So the seesaw occurs when you are at a surplus or a deficit.
So you're right.
I'm right.
So you're right,
It's
yeah.
I know.
4 point something million,
So
yeah.
we're saying that we can't pay for
Field trip.
field trips. I'm just
I'm
am
only
trying
saying
to
that-
wrap my head around it, because I thought that the answer that was given at the last meeting seemed
So, too. Did you think it was 3 something?
wrong, or that there was a
No, I thought there
miscommunication
was
of
ex-
sorts.
I thought
Yes,
there was excess this
I
year.
watched the meeting.
There
And
is
we-
excess.
We didn't get to it because we ended at 1 AM, but
Is that what
Okay,
it was?
so
we were deferred the conversation about if there's excess money this year. I thought we were going to go back and talk
do it.
about
Do it
Okay.
what we could pay for
today.
this year. We did not, at the time, want to budget those things for future years because it might leave us with no excess.
Right. We were going to do that year to year based on our financial.
but
Yes,
this
like a
number is
dividend.
budgeted anyway, is my understanding. So it wouldn't this money wouldn't come out of that.
You're saying the field trip money?
Yeah.
If you wanted to designate an additional to the $1.2 million, whatever, let's say it's $200,000 for field trips,
Right.
your
I think it-
designated fund balance could be $1.4 million for the 25-26 school year.
Okay.
No,
if
we're
you
looking
wanted
at
to-
this year.
Say
So, well, this year, this expenditures for the field trips for this year have happened already, right? For the most part, there's a few left.
Washington.
Washington DC is still happening, right?
I don't know.
The music trip is happening
music,
still.
And you can rebate people.
And
Oh, the music trip's not happening, right?
because of the
'cause-
change in
Oh, the
the
change
buyer
of the
region.
date.
Yeah.
Oh, I know physics is happening, because that was a conversation at my home tonight. Are there really 100 kids who take physics, by the way?
That's what we
Yeah.
were,
Oh, all right.
But I
Good
do
for us.
want to just point out that when I went over it with Joe, the contractual expenses, we do, I'm not saying we shouldn't pay for those, but we do pay for a lot of field trips. Because
No, I know we do, but my understanding has always been different than where the meeting landed, the last meeting when I was not here. So I just wanted to be clear that I think that the way I understand it is correct. Is that right? Yes, that we're really more at like 4 over, not 3.5.
That's this
4
year.
point-
I don't think we know next year.
No,
think
we
it's
never know
lower,
next
yeah.
year's, but every year for the last few years since I've been on the board, it's
Right.
been about $4 million, right?
How much did we put in reserves this year?
Well, our,
From last year's budget, from the previous year's budget, how much?
our reserves for last year was a negative $8 million just because of CVA. So if
Gotcha.
you cull out CVA,
Gotcha, right.
it was about $5 million. So
Wow.
that, you have to cull out CVA.
Okay, so if you call out CVA, it was almost $5 million? Okay.
Surplus.
Something that it was going to decline over a period of years and what that was based on.
That was when the,
Remember that?
That was state aid.
that was the state aid
State
and
aid.
the, yeah. That was
what it
last year.
based on.
That was not.
Oh, based on enrollment, you mean?
No,
Oh,
it was last year. It was the
Yes.
state aid,
You're
right?
The state aid was projected to
They
go
were-
down if the governor adopted the.
If she got rid of our,
the
yes.
The
free
hold
cash.
harmless.
the
Yes,
hold harmless.
yes, the hold harmless, that's right, yes.
So
yes.
that is not projected to decline over a period of years. It's gonna be a consistent.
We also
Well,
get
we don't
very
know.
little bit.
This-
We don't know.
Yeah, this
From
year looks like
state
it's
aid.
going to be the 2%, the hold harmless, but they haven't passed, but that's what it seems to be at this point.
Okay, may I ask, just to manage the time here, can we go around and have a discussion about whether or not we want to talk about, before we complete this next year's budget, if we want to talk about what money we want to finish spending this year? That would be the first item.
Yep.
And then the second item would be whether or not we want to take another look at these few 382,000, and I know it's just a drop in our big bucket, but just to make sure we're being guided in the right direction on that expenditure too before we adopt a budget. So, Mark, are you comfortable if we pause and talk about finishing out this year first?
I think we should.
Okay, Kate, what about you? Heather? Lisa?
Yes.
Bill? Okay, and then are we also comfortable then re-looking at just that little portion of money here, this 382, after we have that conversation about possibly amending?
Of the 382, the number of items behind you that are approved are in the
Okay,
the
so
budget
in,
already.
so
It's only
the
the field
ones that
trip
were,
items.
okay, so just the field trip items. Are we comfortable then reopening the discussion on field trips? Bill?
Yeah, we could talk.
Yes, Lisa?
Yes.
Heather? Kate? Mark? Okay, okay. Just so everyone feels heard. Okay, and is heard. Okay, thank you. So can we pause and quickly talk about other items that we'd need to approve to spend money on for this year's budget, so we understand what we have left? And I know we're not done spending, so that gets complicated, but does that make sense? Do I need to take a motion to do that?
I think there's actual resolutions that are crafted by, like, if you're talking fences and like security
Yeah.
cameras, I don't know what else items that you're considering, but those are formal resolutions that are being drafted. I think Joe mentioned in Friday Notes as they're on the May board meeting.
Okay,
They're going to be scheduled for adoption on the May, because there's environmental impact resolution that the board has to pass, and then the actual declaring it an ordinary non-contingent expense, since it wasn't built into the budget originally. So those resolutions have been drafted by the attorneys for the May meeting.
okay, but if we don't need them to draft them, we could say, hold off on that.
You
Right, we
could,
don't
you
have
you
to.
could not pass them.
We don't have to
You
do
don't
that.
have to do them. Yes, you don't
Right.
have to do them.
Okay. So can we, I don't need to take a motion now then to change gears, is that right? And open a discussion on,
I don't.
what are those two resolutions? So one is the fencing, and what was the other one?
Security cameras.
Security
Oh,
cameras.
security
Security
cameras, okay. So I don't need to take a motion to switch?
No, because
topics?
I think you'd have to take an action on the resolutions that is
Okay.
not on this
Okay.
agenda.
So I guess maybe, are you suggesting we talk about it now and wait until May to vote on it?
We could
because
We
we don't
could-
have the resolution here. that's
But
all.
if we decide that we're not going to move forward with it, then we don't
Yeah,
have
then
to.
we-
Oh,
then
yeah.
we don't
could-
have
we
to
could-
talk
that's,
about
we don't
Then
have
we
to,
could,
Right.
yeah,
give it to you in May, right, not
Yeah.
give it to you.
we
Are we
could
talking
take it
about
off the
fencing?
agenda. We could have a shorter meeting in May.
Yeah.
I think we should
Yeah.
do that.
Okay.
I did
Okay.
have a comment on fencing.
Yes.
Just the entrance to West Side, both the main entrance and the back entrance, part of the fencing plan, I believe, and Mr. Smith, correct me, included a very strong gate, which I think you've been asking for. I think we should discuss possibly, doing, that's not fencing, that's different.
Yeah.
And right now, they block it off with cones when kids are playing. I think a strong gate, that kind of fencing, I think makes sense. It's not a fence, it's a gate, but does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that was a safety issue, right?
Right, the
Yeah.
gate was,
I think that's a great idea.
The
That
gate was-
seemed reasonable.
right, the
Yeah.
gate was designed so students often use that parking lot circle, I'll say where the cars drop off,
Right.
to play.
Yeah.
So instead of just having cones, where I've seen people drive over the cones, I have to say, they've been on their phones on a big, large truck, and they've driven over, I've seen it. So there's a gate to, it really, you're right, it was a safety thing.
funny story about that, but I won't say it.
It wasn't anybody here. It was like
It
a safe,
was
and it
Bill.
just allowed that to be the area for kids to play in West Side.
And on the back circle, is there also a need for a gate there, or in just the front? Where the,
That would be where the buses go. I don't believe we put a
you
gate
don't need a
there.
gate there, just in the airplane
Come
entrance?
up and talk in the. Yeah, just
West Side.
clarified. So Mark's talking about West Side School and which gate you were recommending from a security standpoint.
Sure.
So that would be the Stewart entrance
Mhm.
with Hedge as a circle, that
Yes.
would get a gate, but the Laurel Hollow Road entrance would not.
Correct.
And kids don't play back there?
They don't.
No.
Okay.
No.
And the same, I guess, I'd ask for Lloyd Harbor or Goose Hill. Do they need those kind of gates, cross roadways?
Well, those gates definitely make it safer, especially in the area of, west where they're playing right there. Those cones aren't sufficient.
The kids don't play at Goose Hill in the
They
street
don't.
at all, and at Lloyd Harbor, they don't play in the street. They have so much more space.
Got it.
They don't use that at all. Yeah, so right here, this is where the cars drop off. So this would be that strong gate
Yeah,
where they couldn't get through here,
right.
and they
Oh,
use this to
great.
play. This is not used for play whatsoever.
Mhm.
And then this would be, there's a piece, there's fencing here, and then we fence it all around.
But I think that gate would be money well spent. right?
Yeah, that gate's very important. I mean, obviously, as we talked about the last meeting, it's a balance between the aesthetics, security, and the budget. So that's a decision.
Can I ask
guys
you a
have to
question,
make.
just from a
Yes, ma'am.
security standpoint, too? I also work in schools, and my understanding in some of the, and you hate to say this, but active shooter training
Mhm.
that I've been through is that sometimes it's beneficial for kids to be able to run away through fields and trees. Would fencing all the way around actually prohibit students from being able to escape if they were on a field and somebody was out there?
I don't think it prohibits them. I mean, you're looking at trying to stop them from coming in also. We'll have gates out there, access gates to get out, because you have to think about that. It's very important also. But we haven't seen that historically.
Okay.
Right, where they're fleeing and being gated
Yeah.
in. That's not something you're seeing in
It's
active
just making me
shooters,
nervous. Yeah.
Historically, so it's all about risk management, obviously.
Yes,
That's,
no,
that's-
I know, and it's
you
such a
perceive the
terrible
risk.
topic. Yeah, of course.
Unfortunately, in my business prior to this, all I saw was the bad. So
I know.
that's what my brain is.
No,
So
I know.
if I perceive a risk, I make a suggestion, but I
Yeah.
understand there's a balance, again, between budget and aesthetics.
Yeah,
I
and
was
I don't,
looking
not
at it, I'll
even,
pass
I
these
think
around.
children's safety would be first over budget and aesthetics for all of us.
Yes, and safety
Yeah.
also, definitely.
Yeah.
I was looking at, it's funny, I was looking at the Lloyd Harbor, the Lloyd Harbor camera today, because I try to monitor the cameras every day a little bit, and I'll pass these around. And then within a 3-minute span,
Thank you.
they kicked the soccer ball into the parking lot, within a 3-minute span. You can look at this. And you see the last three. There you pass around. The child actually kicks the ball in the parking lot, runs into the parking lot, is in between the cars in the parking lot. So that's a risk, as a risk manager, I see something like that.
The ball going in the.
You could pass those around. And I just took some quick snaps. And that was 3 minutes and 43 seconds. It was
Wait,
three
this is Lloyd Harbor now?
instances.
This is
of-
Lloyd Harbor.
So that yellow piece there would prevent them from kicking it into the parking lot, is that,
Correct.
so over,
Okay.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
I had to get my bearings here. Okay.
And you'll see it in the photo. Not only do they walk around the perimeter, which also brings some of this in, but they're in class. And I have a guard out there, and I talked to him about monitoring this more closely after I saw that. But he's very busy too. He's trying to watch this.
Sure.
Trying to watch this. So, but I was surprised myself. Within 3 minutes, 3 times, 3 different kids kicked the soccer ball. Oh, I'm sorry. Into that area. And when the one kid went between the 2 cars to get it, that was really a concern.
What kind of vehicle gates would these be, though? I mean, they're the
Well, this would be a
triangular
fence.
ones,
This is
right?
more
That's
of
just
a-
a fence.
more of a fence
No, the
there.
yellow is
The yellow
vehicle
is
gate.
Vehicle gate.
No, yellow is vehicle gate.
That would be the heavy duty.
That's a vehicle gate if we do all the fencing, right?
Yeah, but if we
decide to
don't do all the
just-
fencing and we just had fencing that blocked the parking lot, you wouldn't need a vehicle gate there because people could drive there. Is that for parking on the lawn or,
Correct.
yeah.
So yeah, fence there makes sense.
A fence there makes sense and a gate at west side.
Right.
And then can we see,
How do they park on the field though if we put a fence there?
so no, if they just put a fence,
Where
sorry,
would it
if you
go?
could go back to Lloyd Harbor. Yeah, just right there at the parking lot.
Those are gates.
'Cause-
No,
you
if
don't
the-
need-
if they were
if
just
could just
fencing.
hit a
Oh.
fence there, they can just drive around
Okay,
there,
that's what I
right?
was asking.
Can't they? I mean,
That's my question.
I think that's where you drive.
Well, if there's a,
Do they park on the field that often?
No.
Yeah?
It's used a couple of times a year.
Yeah.
to not-
occasionally, Colonial
There-
Day.
Yeah, on days like that. So, I mean, there's not a lot of spare parking.
The
Really, at any
fence
building.
can also have doors, big doors.
They can just
and-
park at Kate's house.
Yeah. So,
Your grass is too good.
uh, so what do we got? Other campuses, Goose, anything?
Yeah, so can we, so Goose Hill, what is your recommendation for, there's no problem with kids running into the parking lot here, right?
Anything close to a parking lot's a risk concern.
Okay.
Obviously. for
Sure.
me,
Yeah.
And I'm sure for you
Yeah.
guys also, right? So, that's my first concern. there.
Okay,
Again, fencing is just a basic level of security, so if you're looking at security, which I understand, it's better than nothing, but depending
Yeah.
on the height, after 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet, it gets more secure, so.
so
You're
even.
looking at the perimeters, that's different.
Just that, then?
Yep.
Would that be
Oh. So,
from there to there and there to there? Would that be
Maybe,
enough?
and then you do maybe where the yellow is, and then to the right. And then you got all the parking,
Then you need a gate here, because
the
they do
gate
park on
for the
field.
car, yeah. And then everything's sealed off, at least for the kids to the parking.
right, we talked about two. First, we were talking about gates that prevent from street on, and that was the initial. And then we said, do we want to do the entire? Would be exactly what we're talking here, would be this. This would be anybody coming from the public space going forward. These are all houses, this is pretty dense brush.
Right.
This is our exit that we allowed to get back to the parking, to the street over here. And right over here, these are the wooden, kind of like stable type, like it's 3 pieces of wood that place, so it's not very, so so we talked about this initially, and then I think we talked about if we wanted the highest level of security, and that's where we went to here.
Yeah, I think, Alex, what you outlined is a good compromise.
So we'd like to see options, really.
Maybe even a phase one,
Phase one.
Yes.
phase one, maybe we could look at, and we should be just really clear, because I think one of the problems that happen after board meetings is we have all these conversations and we all think we're very clear, but we have like 6 different opinions of what was said here. So west side, the fence that prevents or allows for the kids to play, the gate that allows for the kids to play
Go to
in the
West Side.
street at West Side. That
Right.
would be number one. Right?
So this here.
That there. And
This is
then,
existing here.
that's existing, okay. And then at Lloyd Harbor, is that the next slide? At Lloyd Harbor, fencing on the parking lot
Right.
there. And then
Do we want to include this here, like it blocks?
kids don't, I think, tend to
don't.
go over to that side for recess. I mean, I think it's, if a point is just to block them from running after balls into the parking lot. Well, they walk the track, right? They love that track. But
There
you,
was a volleyball net in that
is
upper
there,
right.
Over here.
I don't know if they
Carissa,
use it.
where do they go?
Really over to the, where the sports court is, that blue area.
Yeah,
So they're over there. The only other thing I would say about fencing is they love to play soccer. The ball's going into the woods, ticks,
Okay.
deer cutting across the field. Like our nurse is well versed in tick removal, unfortunately. So that's my only other thing about having a backstop, because they don't always get it in the net, but they love to play.
wouldn't it be a lot less expensive to have deer fence then than have this fence, that mesh or whatever that keeps the deer out rather than, no, it's not less expensive?
Not necessarily.
Okay,
But yeah, the parking lot, the gym students are, the PE students are typically the ones that are over near that parking lot. Recess happens more this way towards the sports court. We did just move the soccer nets more towards the parking lot because we're giving the section of the field a little bit of a rest. We kind of sectioned it off to make the supervision a little bit easier. It's a really big area if we let them have access to everything. But yeah, I think the parking lot fencing would be great. If we're going to do it in phases, and then just to consider the ticks are a problem, and they often are running into the woods after a ball, or somebody likes to duck in there and be funny for a minute. So that is something that we're seeing.
I'm not a tick expert, but, I have had Lyme disease more than once, so maybe I am. But I think they come with the mice, though, too, not just with the deer. I think that's who typically brings them. And, right, bunnies, yeah. Okay, so good. Okay, but so phase one for the parking lot, and then something to look at in the future. What are you?
I'm gonna
yeah,
draw on it just
yeah.
to make sure we're.
Yeah, oh, good. Look at this. It's organized, Joe. Good job.
Now you've got our attention.
Yeah. Don't we have
Interactive.
an anti-tick prototype somewhere?
Yes, we do. The anti-tick, yes.
We get
We
some
do.
of those?
Right. Kelly Callahan,
Can we
get her
some
in
of
here.
those?
I have a connection, I can ask.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I would mention, and we can look at this at the walkthrough tomorrow night, the exterior doors that students are using right there by the parking lot, they're using that to exit onto the field. So considering, that they don't have to walk by classrooms that way, so that's another area that they're kind of exposed to the classroom or to the parking lot. They're with teachers, they're walking around, but they're exiting that door pretty frequently.
And this is, correct me, there's 2 spots and 1 handicap spot there? Is that all that's?
Yeah,
I wonder if we do.
you could do a little fence
Like
there that
We're
would
losing 2 spots, or 3 spots maybe.
that would help with the flow of students out of the building and not having access to the parking lot. Yeah, do you understand what I'm saying there?
And then
Rich?
if
Yeah.
people needed to park on the field or something, you could go up to that right-hand corner and come down?
We would need something here. I'm not sure on the distance, if that's gonna be good traffic. This pattern was you kind of come in and come out here. That's what that was, because that's how it's worked. I would have to see what the distance here, would that be viable for in and out traffic?
Well, at the high school, you have one entrance.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, that's what we have here. That's what the
Yeah.
doors are.
So,
So we're looking for this circled
Right.
and possibly up to the building. That's what we're looking to
Right,
do in
and gates
phase
that
one.
swing open big enough to allow for vehicles,
that's
yeah.
feasible, big.
You
Good.
do want to have gates there, not a full fence.
Oh,
So they would be top to bottom gates, not the vehicle gates that are like triangular.
Right?
I don't think anyone's saying that they'd be like the mechanical gates, like welcome to my home,
No, but
but
the ones
just like a fence, like,
can open.
that can open.
But I think
Right,
your
the
question, is it fenced gate?
Like the ones you wanted to put at the high school at the circle weren't they
Right,
those were like the triangular ones that are open at the bottom that
Right.
wouldn't stop a soccer ball.
No.
Right, no.
So we would,
Yes,
yeah,
like a fencing.
like a fence, like,
Or a kid.
that is what I'm thinking of. Yeah, like
Like
that
a
wouldn't
pool,
work.
like a pool gate, but big enough to get the car through, is that what you're thinking?
Lisa's saying this is for at the junior, senior high
Right,
school.
but we're talking about this or that.
Something like
No, but
this.
that
That-
top one is a vehicle gate, so we
Right.
keep talking vehicle gate, but that
But no,
wouldn't
we're
work.
saying, but you could make a panel that swings
Right.
open of this.
Well, that's what I'm saying, I'm making sure it's
Yeah,
that
we
and
need
not
to
the
do
top
the
one.
Vehicle gates
Yeah, please, please.
interspersed with the fencing, and to her point, the ball.
The ball will go through it, right.
Right.
So
we
we
get
would
some-
have to have
Also with the
better
kid.
swing.
What am I looking
The
at?
fencing in the lower left corner, that's regular fencing. You would put in what's called a double leaf gate. The
Okay,
gate
he's
would look like
explaining it.
that. So that the gate would look like the chain link fencing.
Right.
It'd be a
Yeah,
double leaf gate.
that's what I
There'd be
figured,
two
yeah.
openings, 5 or
Yeah.
6 feet. It would open to 10 or 12
Thank
feet.
you.
That's for vehicle entry. So it'd be consistent with not having a barrier gate that people could go
Great.
through. The barrier gates are more for driveways where you just don't want a vehicle to go into the
Sure.
driveway, but you still want people to walk all
Great.
around.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so Lloyd Harbor, Phase 1, this bottom fencing here by the parking lot.
This one? Go back. This one? We're gonna move this to some. Something like this estimation, and we're going to, all this now will be fenced,
Okay,
right?
With two car gates.
True car gate, with the true car gates right here.
yes. Okay, so West Side's done, Lloyd Harbor's done, Goose Hill. So Goose Hill, the recommendation was also to fence off, at least in Phase 1, the parking lot,
Right.
right? Which makes sense.
What you traced, yeah, down.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then where the yellow is, there'd have to also be the swinging gate, right? Or, I'm using gate loosely here, but the panel of fence that can open for when you need to park cars on the field.
Right, whatever would be appropriate, maybe
Yeah.
a roll gate.
Okay. Okay. And then, do we have the high school too here? Okay, so junior, senior high, the proposal was for vehicle gates to close the circle and to close the back there and over here.
Right, this is like the English part, this is the back of the field house, and this is the loop in front of the building.
Okay.
Any idea what the vehicle gates cost?
I was going to ask what the pricing is on this. My Aura ring told me it's close to my bedtime. Just got a notification.
We already hit the over on the over-under for the meeting, so
Yeah. Oh, I heard you say 8:30. Good luck.
boy can dream.
Every time I leave my house, I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna be late tonight, kids. They're like, yeah, right.
I know, your husband laughed at me on the train when I said it won't be that late. There's not a presentation with the pricing broken out on these? Okay.
All right.
I mean, I only watched the last meeting, but I thought it was like, and this is going to cost this, and this is, well, didn't it, you didn't have
We
that
just got
conversation?
it, for the fencing is the top line number.
Oh, that was all it was?
226,000.
Yeah, it's just the whole
Okay.
cost.
Do you have anything? Okay.
All right.
Okay, so should we put a pin in this while we wait for you to come back with the number?
We could, I mean, since we, something we would vote on at the next meeting, we could definitely have all the pricing.
Yeah, I think we'd like to know now, though, a sense of,
Approximate.
yeah, what it would, how much we'll have left over if we don't spend it. It really should be part of the presentation,
Are we gonna talk about other?
school by school, what it would cost.
Other capital projects that we're gonna be looking at in a 1 to 3 year range, or we're gonna talk about,
Right now?
yeah, will we do that?
What?
We're talking about fencing, just any other,
Yeah,
would
well,
this be the
I-
time? Like,
yeah.
cause when we did the walkthrough, I was there with Bill, we were interested in looking at fixing and improving upon the cafeteria
Yeah.
and the senior commons. It was something that appealed to me, I don't know, Bill, you
Yeah.
as well. So if we're talking about fencing,
Yeah,
can we discuss
Yes.
that and the speed in which we could do that?
yeah.
Anthony stepped out.
He stepped out to get the pricing on the fencing. So did you want to talk about the other projects, Heather?
Sure. So when we did our walkthrough, we looked at the senior commons and the way it looks now, and we had just discussed some ideas for improvement. Mr. Dambusky also took us through the cafeteria and how food service is done with the traditional serving lines where there's not that much space behind you when you're waiting for food. And we just discussed some improvements to that area. And I think it's something we should look at. I definitely think that area could use a little love, and all the students, I think, would at one point benefit from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think
agree.
that's
I-
come up over and over again, yeah.
I think I think if we have money this year, that would be great, but to me,
Mhm.
that's a longer-term project, because I
Yes.
think we need to plan out. Because, for example, that, one of the items we talked about was possibly reestablishing an outside entrance from the senior commons, but then we would need fencing.
Right.
So we're back to fencing discussion, so.
It used to be here, the whole building used to have sliding doors, we could go in and out. There used to be, I remember I came back and they were all taken out, kids used to go out here and eat in this area, but you're right, Bill, if we did that, we would want to put a fence in this area, so when kids go out to eat, they're definitely blocked off.
Oh, I thought it was in the back by,
No, this is the cafeteria right here, this is the senior commons. Oh, you're right, you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
right
it's where
here.
that path
Thank you.
is,
Yep,
yeah.
You're absolutely right, thank you, Bill. Right here.
That would be- But we could also talk about
so
the
it's not
phasing
big,
of
but,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Like,
not 100 feet of.
Oh,
of
you're
fencing.
saying by the parking lot?
Yeah, cordon
Okay.
this part off, so
Oh,
they
right,
go out to
yeah,
eat here.
So that's not a lot.
100 feet, I'm guessing it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's not gonna be really a big cost considering
fencing.
what we're talking about
The
doing
No,
to
I-
that
No,
area.
I guess
I
the
was more
reason we were
showing
talking.
it's a more complex
yes.
discussion, because it's easy to add a gate and say we're good even if we do nothing else. I think this is a bigger plan.
Yes,
So-
and I think this is where we get into the weeds in a tricky way, right? Where there's so many projects that we should be thinking about and planning for in a purposeful and thoughtful way. And this is just something that was proposed, so then it becomes
Right.
the highest item, but it's not really what we discussed as collectively knowing all of the issues, what we consider top priority, right? That's your point?
Right. I was just
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
of long-range planning.
Yeah,
and
so
just
we're
not
talking about the money that they're
prioritizing.
planning on spending this year
Right.
and whether or not we want to approve them spending money that they're already planning to potentially spend this year, and then how we
Right.
could repurpose it, so.
Well, right, and that's what part of the wish list will be coming this Friday.
Yeah.
But could some of that money then, if we have money left this year, then be appropriated to capital improvement fund to be used for exactly what we're
Yes,
talking
yes,
about?
yes,
That's where we
yes,
put it, say,
yeah.
we're gonna,
Yes.
Right.
and obviously that, the kitchen and that is a has to be done in that 10-week time frame. There's no other time to do that work. It has to be done during the summer.
Should we be
That's
thinking
right.
about anything else that's expected, like within a couple years, or no?
We'll
Is
we'll
there
have that
anything-
list to see what
Yeah.
we're thinking of, and that'll be part of the walkthrough tomorrow at Lord Harbor and West Side to get that feel for what we want to do. Yeah, the lunchroom and senior commons has been the same for the 28 years I've been here.
Oh, good. Anthony, we're just talking while we
Other than
wait
the
for
windows.
you.
Yeah.
So if you have it, come on down.
Yeah, I'm using the high school as reference because that's the only place we priced out barrier gates. And 3 gates in 3 locations, about $7,000. So I think that's a general.
Is that each?
No, total for all 3.
Those barrier gates are $7,000 for 3?
Yeah.
Do we want 4?
Put 'em everywhere. Okay, yeah, it's 4. It was 4 actually in this proposal. So is that for 4 or for?
I have 3 locations. I believe
Oh,
one.
Oh, is
Like
this,
a
this is
double?
1 here, is that right? And then
Yeah,
2,
it's-
3?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
doubles.
Well, that seems reasonable,
no-brainer,
folks,
Yeah.
right?
I'll
Is
clarify.
everyone in agreement? Yeah.
I should
I'll get
say
more
that.
information on the
No,
pricing.
you can say that.
I don't want to take somebody's other opinion away, so.
Well, but everyone can have their own opinion. It's, okay, so I concur. Seems like a no-brainer.
Okay. thank
Yeah,
you.
$7,000 for that. I mean, so, and then is there any way, hold on, don't sit down. You don't have the pricing on the other, on like how much it was per section of fencing or something, right? They didn't give that to you or
No, it's the
by the
whole length.
yard or, no?
Was it $36 per linear foot? Am I correct?
Yes.
That was the. okay.
About, yeah, that's
That was for the 6-foot fence, and 4-foot fence was 20,
24,
I think you're correct.
24,
I believe you're
28.
correct.
Okay, so I guess if we're trying to figure out how much money we're actually saving by only doing what we've just identified as phase 1, we need the numbers run for the next meeting for phase 1. But is there any way to make an estimated guess based on the numbers that we have in front of us right now, just for the purposes of this meeting? Little back of the envelope math here.
I would probably need to use Google Earth and try to put it together.
To get the measurements, but we
Yeah.
don't have the, don't we have the measurements from the company for the
They have the full run.
pricing? Oh, they have the full run, we don't have it section by section?
No, it's done as the entire piece of work. So if it's 2,500 feet, they have that. They didn't break it down into
Oh.
each area.
I'm on West Side, sorry.
Okay.
Goose, where do you want to go, Lloyd? There you go, Lloyd.
So Lloyd Harbor, okay. Okay, so I see. All
We did a
right,
little change.
okay.
I-
So,
I mean, we eliminated so much
like
fencing.
70% of the
Yeah.
fencing, would you say we've eliminated?
Probably that.
Maybe more. So just to be conservative, would we even say 65%'s been eliminated? And
Yeah.
then back out the $7,000 and then back out 65% of what's left? And then does that give you the number? Does that seem right?
Generally.
200
It's good enough for government work.
Yeah, I think you're talking about 45,000 sounds about, I think where we're coming in at. And I think
Okay.
that's about.
That's probably generous,
It's
Yeah,
probably
well,
generous.
just to be conservative and make sure that we're not going
And one thing I want to make sure we're clear on,
under.
we were talking the front being 4-foot fencing, Rich, am I correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Not 6, 4-foot.
yeah.
So-
I reached out to 17 school districts just to see, they all pretty much, the one district had all 6-foot, one district had all 4-foot, the remainder had a combination of 4 and 6-foot.
And
is what
4
they
was
did.
the front.
On the 4-foot, just so you have all the information, if you're thinking about doing it in pieces, and I know ornamental is 2.5 times the cost. If you're just doing parts to keep kids from playing soccer, then the 4-foot is good, and it's good no matter what, it's better than what we have. If you do a 4-foot chain link versus a 4-foot ornamental, if you're chaining the whole thing in, looking at the security aspect, the ornamental is a little safer. I did find a study where it took 3 seconds to breach a 4-foot chain link and over a minute to breach a 4-foot ornamental. But it's 2.5 times the cost, and the other school districts don't do that. But I want you to have all the information.
No, that's great, thank you.
So if you.
We love all the information.
So you can make a decision.
Okay, so,
You can't put those fun colors in the ornamental.
okay. That's true. So if we think we'd come in, what did we say, around $45,000? Is that right? And what was the total price originally, 230?
26, yeah.
232. So we think we'd be left around 190, is that we didn't spend? Does that sound right, 185?
How much do you think that we not fencing, 65%, you said?
65% would be 150,000.
But then with,
Minus.
minus the
146.
7,000.
Yeah, 146, 276 plus $7,000.
Is what we,
Save.
well, we're going to spend the 7,000 though, not save it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That comes to 79,000
I-
for the fence.
232.
Okay.
I think that's gonna be high, but
Yeah, I think-
79,000 is what we're coming at,
yeah,
okay.
I
So
think it's
7,
gonna come in below
that'll
that.
come in below, but just for the purposes of, so let's say it's $80,000 out of that 220. What else could we do for the school district this year with the remainder of that money then?
Well, I was comfortable with the Washington field trip.
Yep.
Or
Has Philadelphia gone too?
Philly went.
Philly went?
no,
Okay.
Oh, no.
not yet.
Oh,
Philly usually doesn't go until
I'm sorry.
May, right? Yes, yeah.
They
I just
probably
happened to
spent
look through
what-
all my camera roll recently, yeah.
They probably
Yeah.
paid for it, though.
But that's,
Can
to Mark's
reimburse.
point, we could give them their money
Right.
back too, right? I mean,
right, they had all the meetings on
yeah.
In meetings and plannings are there.
So could we
Soon, right?
do Washington DC,
Philly.
Philadelphia?
Washington,
What else?
we're estimating 135,
That's high.
roughly 1,000. So how much did you pay this year?
930.
930. 930 times.
How many kids?
I think it's 128. I could be off by 1 or 2. I think that's what
Okay.
the number is. 130
I think we estimated 135 at 1,000.
for next year at
That's what
1,000.
we estimated.
We put in
135 times how many
120,000.
kids?
128.
So that's round up 120.
120.
And then Philadelphia? Where's this
not-
list?
is funded by the district for the students. The parent chaperones pay for themselves for their meal.
Oh, okay, so that wasn't on this list.
Right. Yeah.
Great, okay, thank you.
That was the reason we didn't talk about Philly.
There's the Broadway shows, Trills and Thrills, sorry. Happening
Doesn't
this year,
happen,
though. Great Adventure Physics and Crestwood.
So 120 is DC. We had 140 left over, so we have 20 left.
So what are we gonna do, like, if we were to say we'll pay for DC, everybody gets a check back?
Yeah, I think it's tricky to just pick
Did they
one
cash it?
trip.
I would imagine so.
They
Christine,
probably
would you say
did.
you cashed the checks already for DC? Probably, yeah.
I almost wonder if you go like
I would imagine it's close. To
half of DC and then the other trips or something to hit more grades.
Yeah, let's do that math. So if we do
That would be probably
half of
so
DC is 60.
better.
60, and then what's the total here? 55, 65, 67, 77, 87, 95.
I know, that's what I was talking about, yeah.
So that's, if 95 and a half by a half, so call it 96.
Carried the 3.
Mark, would it,
So
Sorry, that's not
108,
approved math anymore.
108 is if we do
Right,
half of
record.
everything, I think.
What is it? 108 if we do half of Washington DC and then,
Broadway, 2 Broadways, music, physics.
oh, if we split everything in
Oh,
half.
but music isn't happening this year.
Music's not happening.
Oh, save, wow, it's a 30,000 savings, so, let's see. We
it's
can-
$200,600. Half of it is $100,300.
So,
Without music?
Without the trills and thrills, yes.
Okay.
Without trills and thrills. It's about $100,000.
right? Let me just check this. 135 plus 16 plus 12 plus 25 plus 12. That's 100. Yeah. So we could do 50% of the trip.
50% of the trips? Is everyone comfortable with that?
I think it's great.
The fairest way to
Yeah?
do it.
Yeah, we good? Half of the trips?
Little
Yeah,
dividend.
I just wrote a check this morning for physics, so
Oh.
tear that sucker up.
Well, you got to pay half.
You gotta pay half.
Make a new one.
Anyway,
Don't stop payment yet.
All right, so Christine, are you,
Is that for 24, 25?
this
This year
current
only.
year,
Yeah.
This year's. Got
the
it.
trips that are remaining, right? Which looks like all of them that were on the list, actually. Is that right? Have the Broadway trips gone?
Soon. Don't you guys go soon?
Oh, Lloyd Harbor went. Okay, so
And
can we,
Wes is about to go.
Be like when you get your check, what was that check they sent in the mail,
So what happens for them?
the government?
Oh, I didn't get that.
No,
and
it was,
physics is due tomorrow, so
the
that's,
star or-
assume that's
oh,
paid.
like your
Yeah.
star
And
refund?
there
most
was
of
some refund.
DC has been collected. I would
forget.
imagine 95% of the checks have been
So
submitted.
how do we give the money back?
I just had to give them
How-
so
how would
much
we do that,
money, I
Christine?
want to cry.
Unfortunately, to return the money, every parent has to fill out a W-9 form and provide us with we just need it for record-keeping purposes, it's required, and then we would issue them a refund.
What if we commit to paying these trips for next year?
You don't have the money next year.
A
Wouldn't these-
W-9?
Yep.
This money can't be,
No.
I don't think so.
Can you make
No,
it?
no,
if-
it's
and
really
if
not a big deal.
people decline, then they decline.
Right.
Yeah, if the building
fill
can't
it
get
out.
them to give it, then we
Yeah.
couldn't refund, we wouldn't be able to refund them, but it's not really a big deal. People fill them out all the time. It's
Is it,
simple. It's your name and address, really, and you sign it.
can you
okay.
give them a deadline? to fill
Yeah,
it
we
out
would have
by?
the building clerical staff assist with that because they know the
Let's do it.
families, and they would
Let's
just do
offer
it.
it to people. If they
Yeah,
don't want to
just-
do it, if they don't want their
It's not that big a
$35
deal.
back, then
More fence.
more,
More fences.
buy us another soccer ball.
Good.
Okay.
4.5 feet fence.
All right. Great. Okay. So are we comfortable now with that
Yep.
portion of it? Okay. And then the other portion of it was actually, so what I was talking about was next year's trips also, which I know we just said we don't have the money for, but I think before what we said was that actually that designated fund balance, I'm going to get back into this, was the $1.2 million is not the same as the $3.5 million. They're different funds. So we would technically be able to afford putting those trips back in for next year at full, possibly. Is that right?
Well, I wasn't a fan of pre-funding them. I'm more of a fan of like
Waiting till the end of the
putting
year. and see.
January on the
Okay,
calendar and
let's,
saying,
I like
oh,
that.
look, we have 3 million still, let's,
Okay,
'cause-
but can we do it in January and
Yeah, I
not
agree.
now?
Right.
Is everyone
Right.
comfortable with that? Yeah?
Yeah.
Kate, yes, okay, good.
Because then
Okay,
We'll know our aid at that
I
point,
love
right,
this,
and
guys,
everything.
great.
yeah.
All right.
Is that, sorry, I
More
didn't mean to blurt
prudent.
that out, but
I think
just
that's a great idea.
that's
No,
a more
blurt-
prudent way of,
Blurt it out, Bill, we don't want to be here all night, just blurt it out.
And then we
Alright.
can look in future, maybe something we do incorporate or slowly put in.
Yes,
as
let's,
the
if
thing component.
every year we say, oh my gosh, we're able to pay for these every
Build it in,
year, then we'll
built it into the
know
budget.
this
Yeah.
is getting silly. Okay, great. Okay, Christine, back to the presentation.
All right, so are we okay with all the decisions we made on April? Then we're good, okay.
Mark, hold on, he just said well.
Well.
What?
I mean,
I'm going back, Mark.
we're doing, just to go over, we're doing a hybrid model, right? So that's, I think, everybody, can we just go through as a
Sure.
group one more time?
Sure.
So the decisions that were made
Everybody okay with hybrid?
Yes, that's a good exercise. Yes.
was a hybrid
Wanna
model
wait
for
Kate?
ICT. Want me to do it, Mark, or you?
Yeah, but I think we should kind of go
Okay.
one,
That's fine.
it's not that many, so I think
Sure.
probably wait for Kate and then come back and do it together.
Okay, we'll wait.
So, when will we know on the the extra teacher?
For Goose Hill,
Yeah.
we're likely,
we're
we're at
there.
either 99 or 100 right now.
So it's like, what are you saying, like 97% chance of happening?
What would happen is nobody needs to register going forward, which that it's always tricky. Could you have 5 parents say, "I'm going to hold my child back
Yeah, that
because they're going to be
happens.
very young," and we could be at
That
94?
happens.
That's what we need is kind of have that. Here's our drop dead date. By this date, I'll just pick July 1. This is the definitive, unless before we see we're at 110 and we know it's a done deal.
Well, and we
need to
probably
do it.
want it before that to get a good teacher.
Oh
in,
yes, I was
right?
just
Yeah.
picking.
Yes.
Yeah, and kindergarten is always the trickiest of the dates. The rest are already registered for school unless the new entrance is in. I mean, I had a son. We were thinking about holding back, not holding back, and we let him go, and
Yeah.
it worked out.
I could tell you, we've got, in the preschool, we've got kids that are signed up to repeat pre-K, who are deciding whether or not they want to be in kindergarten, so
Yeah.
those could.
So
throw off
it's
the
always,
numbers.
and we're we're small.
Yeah.
Remember, like 3 weeks ago, we were at 84. You're like, well, we got plenty of space. Don't worry about it. There's no problem. And then
Yeah.
I think parents really got warm and realized it's coming around the corner, and I better register, and they came in.
There's not a lot of inventory as far as
No.
houses go right now, which is interesting
Oh,
too.
okay,
but,
interesting.
Yeah.
But we do have the room if we had to add another kindergarten class.
What we would have to do if we add another kindergarten, then we would have to see where we put the UPK. So we talked about today with administrative meeting, and we're going to discuss that, what these possible solutions would be. There's always a possibility, so what are the choices we want to make, and what are the ramifications of those choices? So we're thinking about that now.
Were the parents told for UPK that both classes, that, like prior to registration, were they told that both UPK classes would be at Goose Hill, or doesn't matter?
We said that it would be likely, but it was not a definite decision, because we were still waiting for sections to be settled.
Right, so that could affect whether or
It
not
could for some people.
some students participate.
Okay. So
Kate, we were just waiting for you to return.
we're going to go through them. No, that's okay. We're going to go through these items just one more time and make sure we're all in agreement on where we landed on these. Okay. Take it
Sure.
away, Christine.
So the first decision that the board made is that they preferred the hybrid model for ICT for next school year. And that hybrid model was grades 4, 5, and 6? 4, 5, and 6 full-time at both schools, and grades 1, and grade 1 full-time, a full-time program in grade 1. So that was the decision for the ICT expansion. The ICT program needs at the high school have the board discussed, and it was discussed with PPS and Dr. Schimpf, an additional .9 FTE needed for the students coming in for 7th grade, and that was approved.
That includes a specialized math class for some students that are in Lloyd Harbor right now that need that program. It also includes an increase in ICT in 7th grade because of the numbers. And we are closely looking at our number. It's between a .6 to a .9 after all the CSE recommendations.
Can I just ask a question about the math? Is it just, who's going to teach the math class? Is it,
We have a duly certified special education teacher who also teaches math. in
Oh,
our
okay.
department. Who's very capable and willing
Oh,
to
okay,
work
good.
with the students.
all right, good.
We also discussed and the board approved class size reduction at Lloyd Harbor and West Side, 2nd grade at West Side and 5th grade at Lloyd Harbor. We also discussed that there's additional interest at the high school for occupational education programs for our students, and that was about $75,000, and the board approved that.
Sorry, one question
Sure.
about that. I think it's so cool. Is that to bring programs and knowing how many students are already enrolled in it, or is it like open to other people enrolling?
I'll speak to it. If I'm wrong, Jeanette
Okay.
can just correct me. The students have gone through their course selection
Yes.
process,
Yeah.
and they selected courses, And these are BOCES programs that are offered, and they would be going off campus for those programs.
So great, thanks.
Yep, great. We discussed the CSE chair and that resource, and you'll notice here from that meeting till today, the board approved a CSE chair, but now we're discussing that kindergarten enrollment has increased from our last meeting, and we may need to use those funds for an additional kindergarten class.
So on that, if we go with a CSC chair, and then the enrollment doesn't break, now you have a CSC chair, but you're right on the precipice, so next year you might be looking at another teacher needed. Now you can't substitute because you have a CSE chair and you have another one. So if you, I think that's kind of dangerous planning, because you're locking, unless you're gonna get rid of the CSE chair right away, or we just increased, again, overhead of, FTE, so.
But Joe was also talking last time about there might be teachers who are retiring that we might not need to replace, right? Wasn't that a
Right,
conversation?
I mean, we're
too?
seeing right now, we're in the 100, 105s at the elementary. As those start going up through the levels, we're going to see retirements, and there'll be points where we may not need to replace the teacher. Part of that are the splits where they go to West Side and who goes to Lloyd Harbor. It looks like we're gonna start to soon see, instead of having 4 sections at Lloyd Harbor, they're seeing 3. That's what it appears to be when we have 100 students. We talk about these are those ugly numbers when you have 61 kids or 60 kids, and that's your break. You want to always see like the 65. It's a clear cut. When you have the 59 before the September starts and you're right on the edge. But that's when we're a small district. And West Side sometimes is and sometimes I even detrimental. You could have 28 kids in a grade. Too much for a class, but I would say 14 is probably too small. There's not enough mixing going on with kids. You could even have a 26, but that's the nature of the beast of a small district like we are here, that sometimes we're dealing with those, like we say, ugly numbers.
So then we discussed at the last meeting a math coach, and you'll actually see 2 line items here. The board was not inclined to approve a full-time math coach, and then a discussion ensued about a 0.2 FTE as we roll out a new math program here in the district. So that is what the board approved at that last meeting. Moving on, the Lloyd Harbor ICT contingency position that's identified here was a 6th grade class at Lloyd Harbor that we are watching from April 8th until now. As of today, it looks like that contingency will be utilized, and we will be having to hire that teacher for that 6th grade. We will have to have 2 ICT classes in the 6th grade level.
We're at 10 students right now.
The next 2 items that the board did approve was high school reduction in class sizes and math 7-8 reduction in class sizes. The board did discuss and approve, and we also had a discussion at the last meeting, since scheduling was pretty finished, where the district stood at some of the additional FTE needs at the end of the high school scheduling process. And those 2 FTEs, I think if memory serves me right, Jen, it was 1.9 was the additional FTEs that the district needed. So we're right in line to what was here. The board was not inclined to approve any additional purchasing resources, so that was removed. We moved down to other items the board asked us to look at. We discussed leave of absence in the districts that we do know of that are coming, and the additional costs associated with those, and the board approved that. As discussed tonight, the 6 field trips that are listed, we'll discuss them next school year as the school year progresses. And the last 3 items the board did approve. It was a storage unit for athletics. We had a conversation about storage needs for athletics, and this is an estimated price to lease a storage container and to get what we need for that. The next was the Network Operations Center. We call that the NOC, and hooking that up to the generator for the new addition that is at the high school, and the costs associated with that, $50,000. And then the last is for administrative costs, miscellaneous administrative costs that we discussed, and the board approved those.
Okay. Does anyone have questions based on what we just went through now? Mark, questions?
Could everyone explain to me just the CSE chair again, why we're doing that?
Well, it sounds like we're doing a kindergarten teacher
In lieu of.
in lieu of.
Only if it breaks.
Well, I
It's
think
already
I'm
hit.
Basing it on Joe saying it's almost likely.
It's a definite?
No,
Nothing's
it's not a
definite.
definite.
We're at 99 or 100 today, and we still have,
And if things change, we have a CSE chair. So I just want to make sure I
No,
understand.
we should talk about it. I was
It's a
pointing
good
Okay,
out
I
question.
see, I
It's
see.
a
It
good
probably
question.
should be reflected more as a kindergarten section
Now.
with a possible CSE chair backup.
I just want to make sure, yeah, if we spend the money, I want
Yeah.
to make sure.
Yeah,
that every-
that is a good, so can we change it to be reflective of then additional kindergarten teacher if,
We can
For
call it a contingent
contingency.
position if you'd like. If we can call it a contingent position if you'd like, and
Yeah.
that just leaves it
I
open
think
to
we-
needs.
yeah,
Right, but then Mark has a question about what the CSE.
so you were saying if we don't break, are we going to hire a CSE chair? I think that's your
and
question.
then will we be able to maintain that person if we then need to add another teacher in the future is your question, right?
Well, we probably will maintain it because it'll be in the.
Right,
in
it'll
that
be in that
untouchable
$79
part of the
million,
budget.
We're doing a
exactly.
big guy.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
Fast
yeah,
on
yeah,
it.
yeah,
So
yes,
that
yeah.
will never get questioned
Right,
again.
yes.
So that's why.
Right,
you
no, it's a good
it now.
question, yeah.
So, yeah, so if all the positions we want to add in this district, if we do add a CSE chair, is that what we want to spend $132,000 on? And if so, just hit me with it. Why are we doing that?
Well, I mean, Nicole came up and explained it to us 2 meetings ago or 3 meetings ago. Do you want to come up?
Last
You had the last.
Okay,
Also.
and another one that I was at, so, yeah.
Come on over.
It basically
Come on
makes
over.
her day easier.
She does a lot.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah, hers is, this is
So,
legitimate.
The reason for the proposal for a CSE chairperson, and I know chairperson, the terminology can mean different things for different people, because we do have chair people at the high school, and that's very different than this position. So this position is really assisting the department of chairing meetings. We have over 260 students with IEPs, 92 students with 504s. Most of my time and Kristen's time is devoted from January to the end of May of just being in meetings. I do not want to take that away from my responsibility or Kristen's responsibility, because there is an added value of working with parents, but we are expanding the department. We need to have sustainability. I don't see the infrastructure in the direction in my vision moving forward. So by assisting, having this person work under myself and Kristen, this person could do a couple of things. One is the preschool is growing. It has nothing to do with the UPK. We have a number of families that are coming in, especially after COVID, that have children with special needs. I am chairing all the preschool meetings. That is over 40 meetings, not including any students within district. So that would be something that I think would be a great benefit for families, because they are, we would have more time with someone to help them find services and to also chair meetings in a more timely manner. We're doing the best that we can. I'm working, late evenings, but I'm concerned of the high quality and just in the direction. If we can't do it next year, I will be putting this on year after year. I know it was something that my predecessor had, but I do think we're in a very different position in the direction that we're going with special education and the vision and the mandate that I received from the Board of Education when I was hired. So that is the reason why it's on there. I could list duties specifically for you in regard to what that person would look like. It could be someone that's just chairing meetings, but also it's about helping families coordinate services, especially at the preschool level. I am visiting all the preschoolers because it's my value that I don't want to have meetings without knowing the kids. So we are doing these things that are high level, and I just don't want to cut back on the quality. I asked Carissa to be here because also too, you can hear at the building level the amount of support that our staff need as we're developing the ICT programs.
Dr. Schimpf, can you give me an average of how long is one CSE meeting? I can give you what I think, but I'd like to be more accurate.
So typically a meeting could be 45 minutes. I would say within Cold Spring Harbor, it could be about an hour to an hour and a half if it's a reevaluation meeting. And keep in mind that every family mandated one meeting a year. We also have reevaluation meetings and initials, and a number of parents do request meetings throughout the year. So that's.
So I ask her that question because, you know, there is a lot as building principals that we consult with Kristen and Dr. Schimpf about, and we rely on them and we ask them and we ask them for their support, and they do a great job, but they are truly very, very tied up for much of this is a very, very heavy season. If you'd like to see Dr. Schimpf, you need to be a part of the meeting that she's in, or the 3 meetings for the entire day. So it is a challenge for sure. This would be an asset to, and I know, you know, the other principals could also speak to this, this would be an asset to all of our staff and our principals, and certainly our students and our families, to be able to have administrators who are able to truly support us administratively in bettering our special education programs and certainly strengthening our ICT. It was a wonderful first year. I come from a district that had a wonderful ICT program. I see great things happening already in year 1, and we're just getting better and better. Our teachers are excited, our parents are excited, our kids are excited. I just want to really make sure we're riding that momentum to you know, bettering Cold Spring Harbor for what we know, you know, we are and what we know will continue to be, and grow from there.
So that's helpful. What it sounds like, though, is we're going to get, given all that, we're going to get a kindergarten teacher. So perhaps we can, I think you said it's tough to find someone part-time for that role. Is that it? Because maybe we could do part-time, that they can do the meetings and help and support, but it's not the full.
I think the benefit of a full-time person is that it's our own person. When we hire somebody part-time, a lot of districts, and we can do this, they will hire a retired person. Many times that could be extremely expensive, even more so than if we hire our own person, because they would be considered a consultant, and the cost is extreme. I did mention at the last meeting an idea of the possibility, if we could not put in the budget, about somehow paying at least part of the cost through grants. But again, I know there was questions that came up about the sustainability, you know, after year 1, but I do know that that's how districts do things. I do know other districts have at least contracted through BOCES someone in to have meetings. It's a different culture here, though, so I don't want to have a stranger come in, not know the kids.
No.
I'm going to have to do a lot of the beginning work with that versus working with someone. So there's pros and cons to it all, but I just ask the board whatever you can consider. You know, I do know there's a lot of difficult decisions that you have to make.
Nicole, in the grants, do they cover the full cost of the position?
It all depends on the amount.
Okay.
So I do know, like right now, our grants within our district, you know, is a certain percentage of personnel that's already taken into account. So we would have to look at that, but I did put certain things in that in my previous district.
Because would it be worthwhile then to say, if we could find grant money, let's try it for a year and see how that is working, and then if we don't get grant money for the future, we can decide whether or not to have it again? I mean, is that feasible? But if the grant doesn't cover the whole position, then what, right?
It would have to be partly out of the general fund and partly out of the grant fund. We would have to see how much money we don't know the allowances for next year right now, but we can look into that.
So I just want to clarify, this CSE chair would do pre-K through 12th grade? They would be doing
They would be assigned meetings across all the grades as well as pre-K meetings. And then I would allow myself and Kristen to be more in the classroom and working with staff.
But that would also include, it would be pre-K, but also 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds as well, not just pre-K. They would do the preschool meetings.
Correct. So
Yeah,
you're talking about like
if
the
you
early
live in the
intervention,
district,
Yeah.
right, Lisa?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we, honestly, we don't have
It's
a lot of.
work.
Right.
It's so much prep for every meeting. I mean, I think about
I know
the
my
time
meeting
you
went
spend
like an
just
hour
on
and a half.
my family.
And they're involved kids.
Right.
Thank you. So that's a tough one. What do people feel about this?
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
This kindergarten teacher, do we think that that's going to be a teacher that we need to move through the years with this grade? Could this be, like, we're talking about a CSE chair trying it out. Why can't the kindergarten teacher be looked at as a one-year thing, like a leave replacement type position?
We could see, and once they go into a second grade, first grade and following, we can see a first grade and we see is 94, whatever, pick a number, we know we would be down one section.
Right, or if a teacher's
And-
retiring,
Well,
we're not,
And we don't
depending on
need
the
it.
numbers, like, what do they call it, attrition or whatever, like,
Right.
then, I feel like we're looking at the CSE so hard as maybe let's try it out. Whereas why can't we look at that kindergarten teacher as possibly 1 year
Exactly.
deal?
Yeah,
I mean, we
it's a
we
good-
have very
good
good
way of looking at
elementary
it.
sizes. So if we see that in a grade as teachers retire, and even if someone doesn't retire, we see a grade is down and we don't need that sectioning, we don't have to ask someone back. They get
Christine?
accessed.
What do you think? You think it's April 22nd and we're all crazy? No.
I'm thinking 2
thinking
hours
we
and
have
30
2 hours
minutes
and
we
31
have
minutes.
Yeah.
by law to pass that to. How about Nicole and I can work together a little bit, maybe to see what grant monies could support. Either way, if something is, what you said, provisional for a K teacher or for CSE or trying them out.
Okay.
We can try. The factor, though, to just consider right now is federal. Most of our grants, almost all, are federal dollars, and there is a lot of talk at the federal education level, in Washington as to what's going to happen with grants. Are they going to be specific to? Right now, we have title grants and we have IDEA grants for special ed. So, what's going to happen in the future, we don't know. But we can work together. We don't even have the allocations yet. And we can see if we can support that on a trial basis. I hear what the board's saying is like, we would make it work on a trial basis, because the state has to approve, the state approves as the agent for the federal government the use of your grant money. So if they would approve a teacher who's going to do reading supports, and they may not approve a CSE chair, well, then we can put a reading teacher in, and that
Okay.
could free up funds to do a CSE chair. But we could
do
work
that
together
math
on that.
teacher. Could we put that math?
Yeah,
Oh, I thought you were saying that though, okay.
Okay, so
we would be able to
Right,
work in the
right,
confines of what's
right,
allowed in the
right.
for
grant.
the
and-
purposes of the budget,
Right,
We
right.
can
do
leave.
we
Portion
think
could be
it's
that.
feasible? We open school in September. We could feasibly have a kindergarten teacher and a CSE chair without adding more into the budget at this point?
I think we can take a look at our federal grant money, yes.
Okay. Is everyone comfortable with?
Or even if we get a partial grant, we don't have to pick up the full cost. So
And we may have money
Yeah,
that
we
we
could
can
see, right.
reallocate, right? We've had other classes break over the summer that we weren't expecting, and we've been able to figure out how to pay for that teacher, yes?
Yeah, there might be
Yeah.
some master scheduling things that fall out in the end that we haven't
Yes,
completed
yeah.
yet.
Okay. So are we comfortable leaving this in as a sort of flex contingency now, but with a real effort to make
Mhm.
both happen if needed?
Wouldn't you
Okay.
want to leave a plug-in like at maybe 180,000 there if you're going to get, that way you're budgeting for potential grant money, CSE chair, and the kindergarten teacher? Because if you leave it in this way and you get some grant money and you need the kindergarten teacher, you're underfunded.
I don't know if the grants would cover the kindergarten teacher.
None of
It
the,
would cover the-
But it's whatever it's
Mark's saying
covering.
if you only get like 50,000 in grant,
Right,
you need
that-
130 for a CSE chair, you're short.
Are we going to be short $50,000 or $30,000? So why not make it 180 instead of 130?
well, we would work together to see how we could work, how we could work in where that might come from. We would report back to you as to, there's a
Okay.
lot of months between now and September as to how everything falls out with the scheduling of students and classes.
But we have to adopt the budget, though, now.
You have to, but it is just a spending plan, and that plan has mechanisms to change the plan.
in the budget. We always seem to find money in the summer.
It's built that way, yeah.
It's always there.
Very good.
Go with it. Okay. Are we comfortable?
Yep.
Okay, so, but we're comfortable as a board saying what we'd prefer is, even if the section breaks, that we try to make that CSE position happen if we can find some grant to offset at least half of the cost. Is
Yeah,
that
we'll-
where
we'll
we
work- we'll work
landed?
together.
Yes,
Good with that.
everyone
Yes.
agreed? Okay,
We'll work together, yep.
okay.
Great.
Good. Okay, and everyone else is comfortable with everything else that was on the
Sorry,
list?
I moved
Yeah.
past.
Any questions? Bill?
No.
Lisa?
Nope.
Heather?
No.
Kate? Mark, you
No.
had a good question. Okay, great.
Okay, so here is the final then. There were no changes to the prior slide where we had discussions from on April 8th. So here we are on April 22nd. This is the final budget that the board will adopt tonight. I think it's the first agenda item on the agenda tonight. You'll adopt the budget, and you will also adopt the property tax report card, just so you know. Let me just speak here. This is the balanced budget. This is the sources of revenue that will support the spending plan that you will adopt tonight. And in addition, this is at the 1.75 levy. This is the expenditure plan we discussed, 81,976,000. And then what happens as a result of that is the property tax report card gets filed with SED. And that is basically a summary of a lot of things that happen. You'll notice there that the tax levy changes are represented here, the budget changes are represented here, and this is really just a summary of some of that information that the state gathers, but it's required for the board to adopt that. So you're adopting the budget and the property tax report card, which is represented here tonight. And moving us forward, oops, we're still moving us forward, hang on. So at our next meeting on May 13th, we're required to hold a budget hearing, and we'll hold that budget hearing. It's really just to go over a summary of what the adopted budget is and what the public will be voted on when they go to the polls on May 20th at the field house.
So
Okay.
the hearing is for the public to ask questions?
As a daughter, my father was a social studies teacher, so as a daughter of a social studies teacher, I always give the following analogy. When the person would stand in the town square on the box and say, hear ye, there will be an election on May 20th, and here is what you'll be voting on. That's really what the hearing is. It's not, there's no changes that are allowed. It's just identifying what you as a board have adopted as your
Okay.
budget.
Thank you.
Welcome. And that's it. Any questions? Any more questions?
No. Anyone else? Nope. Okay, great. Thank you, Christine. Okay. This is our first audience to visitors. No one, we don't have visitors, so we'll move on. So now we're going to move to the budget adoption. So shall I read this? Adoption of the proposed 2025-2026 budget and property tax report card resolved that the budget estimate to be submitted to the voters and filed pursuant to law shall be the budget presented at the budget hearing to be held on May the 13th, 2025, in the total amount of $81,976,259 as set forth in the printed document entitled 2025/26 Proposed Budget, and the budget proposition as set forth in the published legal notice shall be placed on the ballot at the May 20th, 2025 annual meeting. So now shall I take a motion to adopt the budget? May I have a first, please? Bill, may I have a second? Lisa, any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. We will now move on to personnel recommendations, even though I'm not happy about it. We've got 2 resignations here. Did you want to say anything? We've got Candace
Yeah,
Brody.
very unhappy to see Candace leave us, but I'm happy that she's moving on to something that she wants to do here. She's been wonderful working with Candace. It seems like sometimes we say it seems like it's been 10 years, and it seems like it's been a day. So, good luck.
10 really good years.
10 very good years.
Yeah.
Good luck, and
Yes, good
best
luck,
wishes for you,
Candace.
Candace.
We know we'll still see you at Cold Spring Harbor events, though, right? Yes, good.
And then Joe Toscano, Mr. T,
Yes,
yeah.
Mr. T.
phys ed teacher, most of his time
Legend.
at Lloyd Harbor, a little split between sometimes a little at Goose Hill. He's done a little at West Side. Yeah, he's the legend. He is Mr. T. He's sad to see him go, but I'm happy for him with his many, many, many years of service in the
He
district.
was in my fun run video.
Oh, that was a
Yes.
fun video.
He was a
We
big
should
part
bring
of
that back, maybe.
We could play it at his retirement
Oh,
meeting.
perfect, perfect.
The video you dressed up, I have that still.
Oh, good, you can play it for him.
And then, so I need to take,
You can do all personnel, you can do all
we're gonna
personnel
do them
recommendations together. if you
There's
want.
one
as a slate then, okay? So, because we're also adding Alexandra Perillo as an elementary
Teacher at Goose Hill.
teacher at Goose Hill. All right. So may I have a first? Heather, second? Bill, any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Other matters. We've got here cultural arts contract and a theater, they're both cultural
Yes.
arts
Yeah.
contracts. Okay. May I have a first? Oh, Lisa, second. Heather, questions?
Question, yeah, so how much are these for?
I usually write everything down, and I didn't today.
So what are, so we contract with these cultural centers and we send kids there? or how does
They
this
come
work?
into us. So
like
these
an
are both
assembly.
presentations we have here through BOCES.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. I
Okay.
usually have everything. I apologize.
We can get it to you in.
It's all good,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're not huge numbers, I
No, they're
assume?
usually, they range from $900 to $1,500
Okay.
typically.
Yeah,
Very good.
great question.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
All-
cultural arts is paid, a lot of cultural arts stuff is paid for by the Lit Lunch. They raise a lot of money
But this I don't.
through that. Well,
This
This
is
is
a-
some BOCES, but some of the
District
money.
funds are set aside just for cultural
Yeah.
arts events. That's where all the money comes from.
So Story Faces is $1,500.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I don't see, hang on, give me half a second. I'm sorry, I don't see a price on the Living Voices in here.
But it's in that range, you believe?
Yeah, they
Yeah,
should be all around
that's-
the same.
Okay. All in favor?
Wait, I think Lisa still has a
Okay.
question. So cultural arts funds several things throughout the district. These particular events are constituted as cultural arts events through the district.
For the
The
district.
district
Okay.
funds that are
Different.
set
Sorry,
aside
thank you.
for, yes.
Just
Okay.
different money, okay. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, now it's the Western Suffolk BOCES vote, which I think we have to be careful on, because last year we voted no, but it went into BOCES as we took no action, which is a different,
My recollection is last year you abstained.
Yeah.
I thought we voted
I
no.
thought we voted no action.
What?
No,
thought
we
we
voted
voted
no.
We did.
We voted no on it.
But it went in as abstained.
'Cause I
It
thought
went
was
in
like
as
a
abstained, because I got a
7 or
call from
8%.
them afterwards asking why we abstained, and I said, we didn't, we voted no. That went over like a lead balloon, but, so,
So let's be clear.
okay, so let's be clear, because again, I don't know if anyone else had a chance to review the budget, but again, it was, they went significantly over the approved budget from last year. Did anyone else look at this? And so the budget that you're voting on actually doesn't even seem to be what they follow, then it just gets increased, and then you're voting on an increase on the secondary increase, if that makes sense.
So do we get a bill on the budget? How does that work?
Yeah, the district has to pay the administrative costs that are allocated to the 18 component districts. But that's for the administrative cost of BOCES. When you sign up for services that they offer, you're paying the total cost of the service that you're signing up for. So just to add a little clarity, my understanding is the board's voting tonight on the administrative component of the BOCES budget only.
Right.
But the total BOCES budget involves many different services they offer. Let's say some of them are programs that students are placed in who have special needs. They begin the year off in their program side of the budget, identifying a cost for an estimated 10 kids, and if 15 kids end up in the program, they then revise their budget. But every district who signed up of those 15 students is paying the full costs for their student who was placed there. That's my understanding, but my understanding is you're only voting on the administrative component of their budget, not the program component.
Got it.
And that's all we vote on. It was laid out
In the
in the flyer.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, well, usually I hate
Go
to
ahead.
say this, but it, hate to make a blanket statement, but it usually passes, whether we vote yes or no. So we could, say we don't want to vote if we feel that we're not educated enough on it, or,
Well, what was the administrative increase this year?
2.2%. For us, it's $2,090 increase.
What's the total budget?
For administrative charges, $4,722,478.
And we find their services to be helpful.
Helpful, right?
We
talked
get
about-
aid on the things that we do use with BOCES, so
They were helpful to us also in our
search.
superintendent search. We did use their we used
Yes.
services from them in a way that was very helpful.
All right. It's good to know.
So,
I feel better about 2.2%
Yeah.
than 7.
yes,
or 8
yes,
or whatever.
yeah, okay.
which I think
So-
it was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's very high.
Vote number 1. So, there's 3 people running for election, and are there only 3 seats?
I think they're all unopposed.
Yeah.
They're all
Opposed.
unopposed.
Yes,
It's nice when that
easy.
works out.
yes.
So should we take this as a slate then? Is everyone comfortable if I make a motion to vote
Do-
in favor of?
Do we need to vote?
Do we have to
for
vote
each?
individually?
It
I
does say
think you have-
select 3.
Okay,
I just think you have to
may
say the
just be-
candidates' names
Oh,
and then
okay.
say
To be
yes.
safe.
okay, so let's vote number 1, the BOCES vote. Are we comfortable moving forward?
Yes.
Positively, yes, with a budget BOCES vote. All in favor?
A first,
Oh, a
second.
first, sorry. Okay, first. Heather, second. Bill, all in favor. Thank you. Okay, now for the individual candidates. May I have a first for Eileen Hers? Lisa? You're a big fan.
Your face was funny.
Okay, second. Heather, all in favor. Brian Sales, may I have a first? Heather, second. Lisa, all in favor. Peter Wunsch, first. Lisa, all right. Second, Heather, all in favor.
Great.
Thank you, Lisa and Heather, for carrying us over the finish line. Audience to visitors, and now a motion to adjourn. Heather, Lisa, all in favor? Thank you. Great meeting, everyone. Thank you. All done.